The Grand Mufti of Palestine, Haj Mohammed Effendi Amin el-Husseini of Jerusalem, was born in 1897 and passed away on July 4, 1974. El-Husseini was an honored and highly respected Palestinian Arab nationalist and Muslim leader. An ally of Germany in the Axis, he used his extremely influential position to help Germany recruit Muslims into the Waffen-SS. He personally met with Adolf Hitler several times during the war. As a historical note, he is also the uncle of Yasser Arafat. Commander extraordinaire of the Scots, he met with al-Husseini several times and considered him one of the most amazing men he had ever met. He described him as a visually striking man, with blue eyes and a long white beard. The source for this of Scotsy quote is taken from his book, My Commando Operations, the memoirs of Hitler's most daring commando. Islam is not the enemy of the West, nor are Muslims the enemy of the white race, despite the brainless propaganda touting such. During World War II, thousands of Muslims and Arabs fought beside their German friends. The great undying cause of truth and freedom is shared between all peoples. Germany and the Arab world shared a long-time friendship, one of cooperation, understanding and respect. In January 1944, Heinrich Himmler met with a group of Bosnian Muslim military commanders in Silesia. What he said to them is very telling. Quote, "What is there to separate Muslims in Europe and around the world from us Germans? We have common names. There is no more solid basis for cooperation than common names and common ideals. For 200 years, Germany has not had the slightest conflict with Islam. Germany had been friends with Islam, not just for pragmatic reasons but out of conviction. God, you say Allah, it is the same, that sent the Führer, who would first free Europe and then the entire world of the Jews." End quote. But actions speak much louder than words. During Germany's crusade to free Russia from monstrous communism and its entry into the Caucasus and Crimea, the Wehrmacht was tasked with reviving Islamic culture and religion, which had been stamped out by Soviet communism. Upon arriving in the North Caucasus, for example, Wehrmacht officers set about reopening and rebuilding mosques and re-establishing religious holidays and celebrations. The German liberators lifted the bans on public displays of Arabic and Quranic script in public, which had been banned by the Soviet occupiers. Muslim leaders welcomed the German armies as friends and liberators. Freedom of religion was restored by the Sons of the Swastika. In a fatwa, which is a ruling on a point of Islamic law given by recognized authority, delivered on May 10, 1941 by the Grand Mufti, said the following: "In the name of merciful and almighty God, I invite all my Muslim brothers throughout the whole world to join in the holy war for God, for the defense of Islam and her lands against her enemy. O faithful, obey and respond to my call. O Muslims. Proud Iraq has placed herself in the vanguard of this holy struggle, and has thrown herself against the strongest enemy of Islam, certain that God will grant her victory. The English have tried to seize this Arab Muslim land, but she has risen, full of dignity and pride, to defend her safety, to fight for her honor and to safeguard her integrity. Iraq fights the tyranny which has always had as its aim the destruction of Islam in every land. It is the duty of all Muslims to aid Iraq in her struggle and to seek every means to fight the enemy, the traditional traitor in every age and every situation. Whoever knows the history of the East has everywhere seen the hand of the English working to destroy the Ottoman Empire and to divide the Arab countries. British politics toward the Arab people is masked under a veil of hypocrisy. The minute she sees her chance, England squeezes the prostrate country in her imperialist grasp, adding futile justifications. She creates discord and division within a country, and while feeding it in secret openly she assumes the role of advisor and trusted hand. The time when England could deceive the peoples of the East is past. The Arab nation and the Muslim people have awakened to fight British domination. The English have overthrown the Ottoman Empire, have destroyed Muslim rule in India. Inciting one community against another, they stifled the Egyptian awakening, the dream of Muhammad Ali, colonizing Egypt for half a century. They took advantage of the weakening of the Ottoman Empire to stretch out their hands and use every sort of trick to take possession of many Arab countries, as happened to Aden, the 9 districts, the Hadarat, Oman, Muscat and the Emirates of the Persian Gulf and Transjordania. The vivid proof of the imperialistic designs of the British is to be found in Muslim Palestine, which, although promised by England to Sheriff Hussein, has had to submit to the outrageous infiltration of Jews, shameful politics designed to divide Arab Muslim countries of Asia from those of Africa. In Palestine, the English have committed unheard of barbarisms. Among others, they have profaned the Al-Aqsa Mosque and have declared the most unyielding war against Islam, both in deed and in word. The Prime Minister at the time told Parliament that the world would never see peace as long as the Quran existed. What hatred against Islam is stronger than that which publicly declares the sacred Quran an enemy of humankind? Should such sacrilege go unpunished? After the dissolution of the Muslim Empire in India and of the Ottoman Caliphate, England, adhering to the policy of Gladstone, pursued her work of destruction to Islam, depriving many Islamic states both in the East and in the West of their freedom and independence. The number of Muslims who today live under the rule of England and invoke liberation from their terrible yoke exceeds 220 million. Therefore I invite you, O brothers, to join in the war for God to preserve Islam, your independence and your lands from English aggression. I invite you to bring all your weight to bear in helping Iraq that she may throw off the shame that torments her. O heroic Iraq, God is with thee, the Arab nation and the Muslim world are solidly with thee in thy holy struggle. After meeting with Adolf Hitler in Berlin on November 21, 1941, Haj Amin el-Husseini recorded in his own handwriting his meeting with Hitler in his diary. The words of the Führer on the 6th of Zulqa'dah 1360 of the Hijra, which falls on the 21st of November 1941, Berlin, Friday, from 4:30 p.m. till a few minutes after 6. The objectives of my fight are clear. Primarily, I am fighting the Jews without respite, and this fight includes the fight against the so-called Jewish national home in Palestine because the Jews want to establish their central government for their own pernicious purposes, and to undertake a devastating and ruinous expansion at the expense of the governments of the world and of other peoples. It is clear that the Jews have accomplished nothing in Palestine and their claims are lies. All the accomplishments in Palestine are due to the Arabs and not to the Jews. I am resolved to find a solution for the Jewish problem, progressing step by step without cessation. With regard to this I am making the necessary and right appeal, first to all the European countries and then to countries outside of Europe. It is true that our common enemies are Great Britain and the Soviets whose principles are opposed to ours. But behind them stands hidden Jewry which drives them both. Jewry has but one aim in both these countries. We are now in the midst of a life and death struggle against both these nations. This fight will not only determine the outcome of the struggle between National Socialism and Jewry, but the whole conduct of this successful war will be of great and positive help to the Arabs who are engaged in the same struggle. This is not only an abstract assurance. A mere promise would be of no value whatsoever. But assurance which rests upon a conquering force is the only one which has real value. In the Iraqi campaign, for instance, the sympathy of the whole German people was for Iraq. It was our aim to help Iraq, but circumstances prevented us from furnishing actual help. The German people saw in them, in the Iraqis' head, comrades in suffering because the German people too have suffered as they have. All the help we gave Iraq was not sufficient to save Iraq from the British forces. For this reason it is necessary to underscore one thing. In this struggle which will decide the fate of the Arabs, I can now speak as a man dedicated to an ideal and as a military leader and a soldier. Everyone united in this great struggle who helps to bring about its successful outcome, serves the common cause and thus serves the Arab cause. Any other view means weakening the military situation and thus offers no help to the Arab cause. Therefore it is necessary for us to decide the steps which can help us against world Jewry, against communist Russia and England, and which among them can be most useful. Only if we win the war will the Arab deliverance also be the Arab fulfillment of Arab aspirations. On March 19th of 1943, in Rome, the Mufti speaks out to Arab Americans, asking them to not support Zog puppet FDR. The following are excerpts from this very radio speech. The Arabs and Muslims will not be deceived by Britain once again because not only have they known its true intentions but they have also known those of Britain's allies America, and I want to draw the attention of the Arab immigrants in America to this fact, reminding them of their glorious past when they supported the national movement. I would also like to remind them that their efforts will be wasted if, God forbid, America and her allies may be victorious in this war, because at such a time the Arabs will never rise again. I therefore know that those Arab immigrants in America will refrain from helping Roosevelt or taking part in a war which he brought onto his country. If those allies win this war, the Jewish influence will be the arbiter in the world resources, and one can thus imagine the future of the Arabs and Muslims, and the dangers which they are exposed to in their fatherlands and beliefs if the Jews and their allies dominate them and spread the latent hatred onto them. Then the world will become hell, God forbid, but Allah is too just and merciful to grant such murderous violators any victory. We are sure that victory will be ours and that of our friends. We have not the slightest doubt about that. We shall not slacken our struggle, nor will we be deterred or quietened. Do not be deceived by the allegations of your enemies, because you know full well about their intrigues, and be sure that the nation which fights, sacrifices and awaits will be the victorious one in the end. On November 2nd of 1943, Heinrich Himmler sent a message to an anti-Balfour Declaration meeting. He stated the following, quote, "To the Grand Mufti, the National Socialist movement of Greater Germany has, since its beginning, inscribed upon its flag the fight against world Jewry. It has, therefore, followed with particular sympathy the struggle of the freedom-loving Arabians, especially in Palestine, against the Jewish interlopers. It is in the recognition of this enemy and of the common struggle against him that lies the firm foundation of the natural alliance that exists between National Socialist Greater Germany and the freedom-loving Muslims of the whole world. In this spirit I am sending you on the anniversary of the infamous Balfour Declaration my hearty greetings and wishes for the successful pursuit of your struggle until a certain final victory. Signed, writes for SS Heinrich Himmler." On April 28, 1942, Ribbentrop wrote a letter to the Grand Mufti Haj Mohammed Effendi Amin el-Husseini on the behalf of the National Socialist Germany Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It read as follows. In response to your letter and to the accompanying communication of His Excellency, Prime Minister Rashid Ali El-Gailani, and confirming the terms of our conversation, I have the honor to inform you the German government appreciates fully the confidence of the Arab peoples in the Axis powers in their aims and in their determination to conduct the fight against the common enemy until victory is achieved. The German government has the greatest understanding for the national aspirations of the Arab countries as have been expressed by you both, and the greatest sympathy for the sufferings of your peoples under British oppression. I have therefore the honor to assure you, in complete agreement with the Italian government, that the independence and freedom of the suffering Arab countries presently subjected to British oppression is also one of the aims of the German government. Germany is consequently ready to give all of her support to the oppressed Arab countries in their fight against British domination, for the fulfillment of their national aim to independence and sovereignty, and for the destruction of the Jewish national home in Palestine. As previously agreed, the content of this letter should be maintained absolutely secret until we decide otherwise. I beg your eminence to be assured of my highest esteem and consideration. To His Eminence, the Grand Mufti Haj Mohammed Effendi Amin el-Husseini. Signed, Ribbentrop. Africa, the Germans and the Arab people were both allies and friends. The German government, in accordance with Arab and Muslim leaders, printed leaflets which they spread throughout the Arabic population, telling the people that they must help fight for their liberation. One such leaflet, from 1943 in Arabic, was printed in 1 million copies and said the following: O Arabs, do you see that the time of the Dajjal, who is comparable to the Antichrist, has come? Do you recognize him, the fat, curly-haired Jew who deceives and rules the whole world and who steals the land of the Arabs? O Arabs, do you know the servant of God? Hitler has already appeared in the world and already turned his lance against the Dajjal and his allies. He will kill the Dajjal, as it is written, destroy his places and cast his allies into hell. The Grand Mufti Hajj Muhammad al-Husseini of Jerusalem was an iron ally of Germany in the Axis. Like many other Muslims, he lived in Germany in exile during the war. Adolf Hitler personally promised him that he would liberate the Arab peoples. The Mufti admired Germany and had great respect for the German people. He said that Germans were a people with boldness, perseverance, toughness, and a love of order, and declared that every Muslim throughout the world is a friend of the Germans. Even after the war, the Arab people did not forget the Germans' sacrifice and commitment to them. They opened up their hearts and their doors to thousands of Germans fleeing the murderous, bloodthirsty Allies. They helped these Germans obtain new identities, gave them jobs and new lives. One such person was the German Johann von Leers. Dr. Johann von Leers was a devoted National Socialist and old fighter for the cause. He was a professor and propaganda ministry official and was also an honorary Sturmbannführer. After the war he converted to Islam and changed his name to Omar Amin von Leers. He served in the Egyptian Information Department and was even an advisor to the President of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser. In the May 29, 1953 issue of the Deutschland Brief, von Leers praised the natural affinities between the German and Arab peoples. He wrote: "This is no doubt due to the moving humanitarian reception which hundreds, perhaps thousands of German refugees, found after the war among the Muslims of the Middle East. Islam's simple all-God doctrine, which is not tied to Judaism, and its enmity against the Jews, won the allegiance of many of these refugees. The repercussions are gradually being felt in Germany. There were a number of notable German Muslims during the Third Reich and many other Germans who converted to Islam after the war. Talk about Adolf Hitler and religious freedom. Here's a small list of National Socialist German Muslims. Also of interest is a December 1942 essay von Leers published in the journal Die Judenfrage entitled Judaism and Islam as Opposites. Muhammad's hostility to the Jews had one result: Oriental Jewry was completely paralyzed. Its backbone was broken. Oriental Jewry effectively did not participate in European Jewry's tremendous rise to power in the last 2 centuries. Despised in filthy lanes of the Mela, the walled Jewish quarter of a Moroccan city, analogous to the European ghetto, the Jews vegetated there. They lived under a special law that's of a protected minority, which in contrast to Europe did not commit injury or even traffic in stolen goods, but kept them in a state of oppression and anxiety. If the rest of the world had adopted a similar policy, we would not have a Jewish question. As a religion, Islam indeed performed an eternal service to the world. It prevented the threatened conquest of Arabia by the Jews and vanquished the horrible teaching of Jehovah by a pure religion, which at that time opened the way to a higher culture for numerous peoples. For his writings, Omar Amin von Leers was pursued by his Jewish enemies and the countries they controlled until his death in Cairo in 1965. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Christianity destroyed for us the whole harvest of ancient civilization, and later it also destroyed for us the whole harvest of Mohammedan civilization. The wonderful culture of the Moors in Spain, which was fundamentally nearer to us and appealed more to our senses and tastes than that of Rome and Greece, was trampled down, I do not say by what sort of feat. Why? Because it had to thank noble and manly instincts for its origin, because it said yes to life, even to the rare and refined luxuriousness of Moorish life. The Crusaders led to make war on something before which it would have been more fitting for them to have groveled in the dust of civilization, beside which even that of our 19th century seems very poor and very senile. What they wanted, of course, was booty. The Orient was rich. Let us put aside our prejudices. The Crusades were a higher form of piracy, nothing more. Intrinsically there should be no more choice between Islam and Christianity than there is between an Arab and a Jew. The decision is already reached. Nobody remains at liberty to choose here. Either a man is a lower caste, or he is not. War to the knife with Rome. Peace and friendship with Islam. This was the feeling. This was the act of the great free spirit, the genius among German emperors, Frederick II. National Socialist Germany and the Axis powers found anxious supporters amongst the Arab peoples. They found many die-hard supporters of National Socialism and Adolf Hitler in Palestine. The Palestinians saw National Socialism as liberation from the British-Israeli Zog Empire that was in modern day, due to the events of World War Zog, installed the Palestinian Zog they now call Israel. Palestine was brutally stolen from the Palestinian people after World War II. In the history of mankind there are few peoples who have endured the hell the Palestinian people endure every day. They live in a constant state of terror, violence and hopelessness. Their homes, businesses and land stolen from right under their feet. 750,000 people driven from their homes. For over 6 decades they literally lived in concentration camps, unable to even freely leave to go to the hospital or doctor. A racist, criminal gang murders and destroys them generation after generation and, for the most part, the world remains silent. Adolf Hitler gave quite an illuminating response to US Zog puppet Roosevelt about Palestine on April 28 of 1939. It read as follows. In the same way, the factors obviously escaped Mr. Roosevelt's notice that Palestine is at present occupied not by German troops but by the English, and that the country is having its liberty restricted by the most brutal resort to force, is being robbed of its independence and is suffering the cruelest maltreatment for the benefit of Jewish interlopers. The Arabs in that country will therefore certainly not have complained to Mr. Roosevelt of German aggression, but they do voice a continuous appeal to the world, deploring the barbarous methods with which England is attempting to suppress a people which loves its freedom and is just defending it. This too is perhaps a problem which will have to be resolved at the conference table, that is in the presence of a judge, and not by physical force, military force, mass executions, burning down villages, blowing up houses, and so on. For one fact is in no doubt. In this case England is not defending herself against a threatened Arab attack, but as interloper, and without being called to do so, is endeavoring to establish her power in a foreign territory which does not belong to her.